All right, it's your boy DTM here, and I am super stoked. This is actually breakfast, but it's also the detox juice, the beauty juice, and the energy juice. It's a classic DTM. I mean, I know that I make the same recipes over and over and over again here on the tube, but once you get to this level, 25 years of daily juicing, basically what you end up with is about 8 or 10 fallback juices, and this is one of them. It can't be beat. And I wanted to talk today, as I move through this video, about a juice recipe to heal all disease. And I'm going to be talking about this more and more because I think it's really important. I just see what's going on out there in the world, and I think what has been missed as a cure for all disease. And I know that it sounds crazy and simple, but I kind of came up with it through this Instagram argument. You know, when I was being attacked by all these people. And what it was simply the fact that I was like, listen to me. You know, when I was trying to tell these people on Instagram that wanted to promote vaccines and chemotherapy and drugs and surgeries as being the be-all, end-all of health. But I think that we overlook the fact that health is actually the cure for all disease, but we don't promote health in general because the pharmaceutical companies have owned the media for quite some time. The medical, military, pharmaceutical, corporate conglomerate has basically owned the narrative for the propaganda of the people. So they are controlling what is being shared with the masses as the truth. But you got to dive deeper and find a higher truth that's always existed. Because these truths that we're being told these days are truths that are only in the modern context to support and empower and profit certain organizations and corporations. But the truth is what sets humans free. And the truth is that radiant health is the cure for all disease. And so what's cool about being able to say that is that it's actually legal to say that. There's a lot of things that you cannot use the word cure for. But when it comes to all diseases, health is the cure. So what I'm doing here on this channel is promoting health. Now there's a lot of different ways, there's a lot of different niches, and there's a lot of different genres going on out there, and I understand. I'm looking for the correlations between the people that are getting results. And one of the things that is kind of interconnects any of these different, the keto, the carnivore, the vegan, or the raw, you know, the living foods is what I like to do, because many of those other foods are of the body, and the body has adapted to cooked foods somewhat. The body has adapted to meat, particularly raw meat and raw animal products, far better than cooked, but it still has adapted to all those things. The microorganisms have adapted with us to be able to process those things and turn the foodstuffs that we put into our mouths into molecules that then the cells use. We don't really take any nutrition from the food that we eat, but the microorganisms break it down, utilize it for their nutrition, and then their metabolic byproducts are what our cells use, particularly the mitochondria, creating ATP through the molecules that are being released by all the different food that we eat. But one thing I want to point out, and the reason why I go with raw foods, and I'm not giving anyone a hard time, because I have a lot of different friends that do a lot of different things, and I don't really know hardly anyone else who's totally on live foods, just a few handful of people. I know a lot of people that do eat a lot of raw foods and really enjoy them. So keep your microbiology strong and learn how to train your microbiology to be able to adapt to whatever it is that you want to eat. One thing I've noticed lately is a lot of people that were kind of like in the vegan movement or the raw movement actually kind of caught wind of the carnivore trend, and then they wanted to try the carnivore experiment, and now they're having a hard time going back to their favorite plant foods. And so for most people, the average person should be on and omnivore's diet, and then keep that diversity year round. Like, I'm plugged in with what I want. And I built my microbiome around the food that I like, the living foods, because the living foods contains one thing that the other foods don't, and that's the subtle soul spirit aspect, and that awakens you to the most subtle levels. And so for me, full awakening and resensitization and total regeneration. That's what we're talking about here. If you're healthy, you can get away with a lot of different things. But the path of regeneration is a narrow path, and it's a very unique path. And that's the context in which we're speaking here. And I know that is, it's not that popular. It's a lot of hard work. You know, it's almost in a few months, it'll be 20 years on live foods, and I'm still doing the inner work. I'm still doing the transformational process. I'm still working through and regenerating to another level of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual freedom and health. So it's a constant process. It's a very spiritual process. And I like that that's the subtle aspects in the living foods, the spirit aspects, the life stream. That's why I like to keep everything, the microbes alive, and I like to keep the electricity alive, and I like to keep the water alive, and I don't really want to mess with it. And so that's why I keep all my foods live. And so I tend to stay really thin and soft, but that's what I like. I'm really working right now on ease, effortlessness, sort of like effortless manifestation. So lately I've noticed that as I've gotten clearer and brighter and cleaner and more energized with all aspects of my healthy lifestyle, I've been able to manifest more rapidly, eliminate that which is, sometimes I would get stuck in the negative zones or with a negative person or a negative thought state, and I'm much more rapid to quickly turn that around and just keep moving forward in a more positive and expansive direction. So today's juice recipe is, in fact, I might even just make this video and then make this one next, as a matter of fact, because I really want to talk and give some information on how you can heal yourself of all disease by getting healthy. And then I'll be making some videos soon on what a healthy lifestyle looks like in the modern world and how you can use the tools that are available to us by making some investments and then avoiding that which is catastrophic. And I digress all the way back to my original point. We started this rant in the first place, and that was that the common denominator for people getting results is the removal of the mainly processed food. If you can do that, you're stepping into a right direction. Then you can refine yourself by taking a 3-day water fast or a 7-day water fast, better yet, and then doing mono meals and finding what food works with you, what foods lift you up, which foods stabilize you, and which foods pull you down. Because when you're always eating a mixed diet and you've got 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 or 50 things in a meal, it's hard to know what it was that brought you down, stabilized you, or brought you up. And the mono meal concept has really helped me to understand and become super aware of what works for me and what doesn't. But the underlying thread for the people that are getting results is the removal of the processed foods and, to the best of our human ability, removing the toxic synthetic chemicals. And I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but the masses don't get it. I'm watching YouTube all the time. I'm researching what's trending. I see what's going on out there, and I don't see enough people understanding that at one point we went from these diseases of having a lack of hygiene. In other words, the cheese and the bread was just rotten, and there was poop all over the sidewalk. Okay, well, we changed a lot of that with refrigerators and sinks and toilets. Now what we've got are the diseases of the chemicals. That's why we're seeing so much brain damage. That's why we're seeing so much autoimmune, cancer, depression, and it still hasn't sunk in. So I'm just going to keep doing this. This is my job, one that I enjoy very much, but I definitely want to keep working for the practical purposes, but I also want to continue to share that message because it's made a huge difference in my life. And what started me on this process of health was the fact that I was damaged by chemicals from a very young age, and then, as a baby, And then in school, you know, you're taking fluoride shots and fluoridated water. And then I had to dig my way out of this and do a lot of research and find out what it was that was causing me to not feel the best. So over time, I've slowly figured it out how to avoid all of the, you know, just the tap water, the fluoride, and all the chemicals and the biosludge in the water supply. So I get a water distiller and I use that, and I use the fruits and vegetable juices to stay hydrated, because that's a pure water that has not been contaminated by pharmaceutical drugs in the water, you know, lead and other types of sediment that tend to solidify the body, and you lose that youthful flexibility. So I was at yoga this morning and I'm doing really well. You want to keep as much of that sediment out of there. The chlorine ruins the microbiome, so you want to find a way to drink fluids that are fresh and alive and pure and clean without the chlorine, the sediment, the biosludge, and the fluoride, which hardens your pineal gland, and I'll make a video about that. And it solidifies everything, your organs, glands, tissues, and pipes. You want to eat and live and try to keep your tissue baby-like all your life. And so that's what I have. So when you're on a live foods diet, you're eating foods that a baby can eat, and your tissues stay baby soft. So you don't get all big and buff like these guys with the huge muscles. That's all the hardened, you know, the acids in the muscles, and it makes you tight. But it's just for someone like me who wants to be more on a spiritual path and maybe have longevity and ease. That tightness and aggression and tightness is what I experienced as a bodybuilder. And as you loosen and loosen and loosen, as you get more mature and you get clean, you can be a grown man. You can be flexible in yoga, energized out on the trail, have a lot of fun, keep your brain soft so that the circulation is good and you're not becoming calcified or ossified in the brain, the joints, and the tissues. So that's why a lot of liquids is really, really good. The living liquids, these soft, gentle foods that are non-stimulating and very nourishing. So the avoidance of the chemicals is what's going to regenerate mankind. Right now we're relying heavily, and people aren't aware. They're not aware of what they're breathing. You know, I had a friend who got lung cancer, and you know, he was telling me how he's a good friend of mine and I love him, and he was telling me how the chemotherapy saved his life. But then his girlfriend came over and said, well, actually, and I was like, was it really the chemo? And he said, well, the chemo, you really have to be strong to survive chemo. So luckily he's just a tough, strong, big guy. But then find out more from his girlfriend. She kind of interjected and she goes, well, you also started drinking green juice. You also quit the job where you were breathing in toxic fumes from the woodworking you know, materials. You also started dancing every day, and you also quit chasing money. So those other factors I thought were more so involved in what saved his life, because even he said, you know, the chemo almost killed me. So it didn't quite register with him maybe that the green juice and the fact that he quit the job and went out and started breathing fresh air and got away from the chemicals, which was causing the lung cancer, because the chemicals and viruses are what are causing the cancers and stuff. So you want to stay clean and pure, and that's why I always recommend the detox lifestyle. And you can see as the disease rates shoot up, you know, in society, 1 in every other person is going to have cancer by 2035. And, you know, there's going to be 1 in every 3 kids is going to have autism by 2035 at the present rate. Dementia is already across the board, and all the other diseases that are rising at a very rapid rate. And what you can do about that is avoid all the toxic synthetic chemicals, all the processed food. Because the number one correlator right now that is either you're making it or you're breaking it is the avoidance of processed foods. Whole animal foods, far better for your physical organism than processed vegan foods. Okay, and that's really hard for some people to accept, because they think as long as it's vegan, it's going to be okay. But that's not really true when it comes to experientially, because those vegans are really, they're on a lot of drugs, they're on a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, and they're also on a lot of different recreational drugs to deal with the mental dysbiosis coming from the gut dysbiosis because of the introduction of processed foods, which in general has far more pesticides added to it. Everything on this table is organic. I promote that heavily. Yes, there's some sprays used organically, but basically I emphasize organic because I want people to start thinking in terms of how can I get food that hasn't been altered with chemicals. It's pretty much making the birth defects, adding to the autism. That's a very easy thing to understand once you understand human biology. But right now the narrative is that we don't know. Oh no, it's a big mystery. All these diseases that are so-called a mystery, it's great that it's a mystery for the pharmaceutical medical cartel, because then they can keep making trillions and trillions of dollars around the world. But if the common sense came forth and everyone understood, health is the cure for disease, and health is an automatic byproduct of getting everything out of the way that is blocking health. So that's why water fasting is the fast track back to health for everyone and true regeneration, because what happens is people go from this diet to this diet to this diet to this diet, finding better ways to stimulate their body over the top of the chemical damage that took place at a very young age and those calcareous deposits that damage nerves. And then when they find a better diet, they got to keep stimulating themselves instead of tracking back through, going back all the way back to birth, and then starting over and rebuilding the body in a newer, better way with the new knowledge of the avoidance of the chemicals and the synthetic processed denatured foods, which then diminishes the microbiology, which diminishes the immune system, and then a little bit of stress and a virus can just put you down and put you out of cancer. So you've got to work on the physical level, which is, fresh, whole foods, as raw as possible, whether that's plant foods or animal products. Can you dig it? Raw, plain, simple, unmessed with. Just grab it and eat it. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Or, for me, I juice it because these are tonics. And I use these fresh, living waters in these fruits and vegetables because they are distilled lighter water, so the nutrients can penetrate, electricity can penetrate, and then I can also eliminate any buildup over time. So the juicing is one way to eliminate the buildup, to hydrate, electrify, and flush out the system, energizing the system and keeping that system from being bogged down by too much cooked fat, processed foods, breads, grains, animal products, and things like that. So if you get out of whack, you can do a little 3-day juice cleanse. Better yet, prepare yourself mentally and psychologically to understand the art of fasting for 24 or more hours. 36 is great. 72 hours is a great reset for the immune system. But then when you start getting up into 7 to 10 days, that's when you start making big strides physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and beginning to truly understand how the physical organism works and how we are actually breathing machines above and beyond the solid nutrition. The solid nutrition has a lot of benefits for the microorganisms and the ATP and the energy. But really what you want to do is learn to get outside and breathe more and keep the blood thin and healthy by breathing in a lot of, number one, microbiology is actually breathed in through your nose, so it calibrates you to the environment. So getting outside into natural environments is the one thing that you can do to keep you natural. The reason why we are so sick as a species is because of our disconnection from nature. Soil actually heals the gut. That's why I'm not going to rinse any of these vegetables. I'm going to leave the dirt on them. Okay, that's a whole other conversation in itself, but reconnecting back to nature and trying to do your best to emulate nature, to be in nature, to utilize nature, natural foods, instead of the corporate foods supply is going to really help you to regenerate yourself and heal yourself of any disease. So, if you have any dis-ease, set your intention to get radiantly healthy and do whatever you got to do that, And if your diseases go away, don't blame me. Peace.